My name is Chuck Rocha. I've never been to college. I'm a convicted felon, and I was a teenage father. I've lived a real life. What you learn quickly is everybody's living with something. We put so much pressure on these young men and these young women, to be honest, about being perfect. You got to go to college, then you got to go get a master's degree. You need to intern with this congressman. You need to get this certain job, and maybe you can make it. Own what you're not, because the rest of America is not perfect either, and they'll like you more.
And my one question to you about that, though, is Donald Trump has proved that you can also never say you're wrong. You can also never say you're sorry. You can also never speak honestly, and you can reach the highest level of office. What do you think? Hey, everyone. Welcome to another Lunch with Jamie. Really excited today to be joined with political strategist and the co-host of the Latino Vote podcast, Chuck Rocha. Some of you also may know his Substack, The Rocha Revolution. Chuck's also the founder of Solidarity Strategies. And I've been a fan of his since I met him on the Milken panel, where he just spoke truth and spoke passionately and powerfully. And I was really excited to get him here in front of you guys and to share his voice with this audience. Chuck, thank you very much. I know you're in transit and you're catching you in, I think, in New Orleans now.
Yep.
Which is probably my favorite city in America. Since this is called Lunch with Jamie, we are going to start with a food question for you. This toughest question of the day, as always, for every person. I know you from Texas. You live out of a suitcase now, but I want to stick with Texas for a second. If you were going to give us 3 restaurants to eat anywhere in the state of Texas, or you can pick a city, where would those be?
We would start with a local hamburger joint that started in Texas and grew. I don't eat much or any hamburgers these days like I used to, because I'm a man of a certain age, but Whataburger would be number 1. Whataburger, for all of you In-N-Out fans, sit down. Just stay sitting down over there. Whataburger's king. And then second would be the Mexican restaurant in Tyler, Texas, named El Chico's. El Chico's, if you go to El Chico's, you can get the Rocha beans, which is my father and uncle. My father was one of 15 kids, so you can get the Rocha beans, which are refried beans with onions and jalapenos cut up in it. And then the next one would be the Country Tavern in Kilgore, Texas, where you can get the best brisket in the world.
Love it. Okay, that's great, and that's saying a lot. Best brisket in the world, because I know there's a lot of options in Texas for great
and good ribs.
And good ribs too. Well, I hope you get to enjoy a little food while in New Orleans, my favorite eating city in America. Chuck, you have been very busy right now. You have been on every news show, interviewed in every place you can be interviewed, for one reason specifically. And I want you here to tell us what the hell is going on in Texas.
There's a lot of craziness going on. The bottom line, like I've described it about 15 times over the last 48 hours, is the Republicans are really worried about the midterm elections. And I mean worried, like they know that the odds are stacked against them. This bill that they just passed, I refuse to call it beautiful, I like to call it the big bullshit bill, is going to be problematic for the voters in the midterm. You couple that with history, which is normally the party that is not in power gets to win back seats. And so what they're doing is literally, get this, Donald Trump wants to rig the system. He wants to rig the system because he needs more seats in play that are safe for Republicans. They only have a couple seat majority. So what he's doing is mid-cycle redistricting. Keep in mind, we redistrict every 10 years based off the census. Do Democrats gerrymander? Do Republicans gerrymander? Absolutely. Everybody gerrymanders. That's how the process works. If you're in charge, you get to gerrymander and draw the seats however you want to. Well, in Texas, they gerrymandered all their seats. They made a bunch of Republican seats in just a handful of Democrats. Democrats were not in control of any part of the redistricting. And now, 6 years later, really 5 years later, Donald Trump has called the governor and said, we're going to need more seats. You know, you could squeeze more seats if you go and have a special section and redraw these seats in the middle of the term. And that's what they're doing now. And it's ludicrous. And there's nothing, for all of you scoring at home, there's nothing Democrats can do to stop it, because we have no control of any part of our government. So what did they do? They left and they flew to New York and Chicago so that the House and the Senate couldn't call a quorum to actually pass any bills. Now you can say, yay, Democrats, it's over, we won. No, it's not, because the if the time runs out for the special session, which I think is 30 days, the governor can just call another one. We've done this before, and eventually they run out of money or they run out of time because they're afraid of being away from their families for that long. They come back home, the quorum's broken, they get to do it. We fight this out in court a little bit, and that's where we are today.
Does this shock you or surprise you at all? I heard some things, someone talking about the fact that in 2010, there was this sort of strategic plan by Republicans to take over these state houses so that they could actually start passing, laws along the lines of these. A, is that true? And B, how did the Democrats miss that so much?
We've lost a lot of it in down ballot races with Democrats. I'll remind everybody here who love them some Barack Obama, like I love me some Barack Obama. We lost 1,000 House seats under Barack Obama. That's how little investment we made in the infrastructure at state parties and state legislatures while Republicans were building a farm team. Shame on us. We should do a better job at this. This is a big reason we're in the situation that we're in today, is because we've lost control of so many state legislatures, and they did have an exact plan to do this while Democrats were doing whatever Democrats do, trying to save the world, trying to save things, and not doing a very good job at messaging. We let them catch up on us. Now, the key here is that sure, everybody gerrymanders, but not everybody handles it in the same way. I went back and looked, Jamie, at all the states where if we wanted to now redistrict ourselves and do the same thing they did in the seats that Democrats have, the state house, the state senate, and the governors, I went and looked at their systems, and good faith Democrats, bless our heart, we're just too good for our own good. We went into almost all of these states, went to the voters and created nonpartisan commissions because we're the good party and we're the good guys, and we did it where it'd be fair to everybody and have fair districts and take politics out. Well, it's almost impossible for us to go in and do what they're doing because we've been trying to do good governance. Now, people would say to me, Chuck, that's what we should be doing in America. It should like democracy. Well, I tell you what, I said this morning on CNN. There's a time you really need to fight back, and it's kind of the old bully scenario. Everybody now stepping to me on TV going, Chuck, what about California's going to do it now and Illinois is going to do it? I'm like, look, we didn't start this. Texas was just walking down the street, minding its own business, and it got sucker punched. Now it stood up and it's fought back and whooped their ass, and now its friends have showed up to whoop some ass, and you can't blame Texas. We were just walking down the street trying to mind our own business, and y'all come up and sucker punched us, so you're going to get what you're going to get.
That's so well said. I guess the question, and I'd love you to clarify, is there's this option of either A, let Texas do this, let Texas roll the dice here. I heard you talk with Mike on the podcast last week where you actually think this could backfire against Texas, and they may be overly confident on what this redistricting will lead to. But at the flip side, I also think I've heard you kind of say you don't think California should, and New York and other Democrats say should fight back and sort of, do this sort of punch it out strategy. So I'd love you to kind of clarify both those ideas.
Two things. Number one, how could this bite Republicans in the ass? Your listeners are like my podcast listeners. Y'all are a bunch of nerds, and that's why we love you. And listen to me, nerds, what's going on in this redistricting fight is they're redrawing lines based off of how well Donald Trump did, a lot with Latino voters. He dramatically overperformed in a state like Texas, and they're drawing lines based off of his performance. And if you look at the map they're going to pass, the one that's going to get through, they've even created more Latino districts. But the problem is they are assuming, this is the part you write down, they're assuming that we're going to perform at that level and do better every election, when in fact, if after the 2018 election, when there was the highest turnout for Democrats by Latinos, and you lay that performance over these maps, they only pick up 2 seats and not 5. And we win those seats in the Valley. So their assumptions are wrong. Their assumptions could be right, Democrats. It's on us to get those Latinos back. There were a poll out yesterday by Eki's Lab when asked generically with battleground state Latinos, do you want Democrats to win in the midterms or Republicans? Democrats were at 48. Republicans were at like 37. So there's a big gap there now already starting to create because Latinos are anxious and they're angry. And so I don't think that they're going to perform as well as Republicans think, and there's an opportunity there. And to your second question, Mike Madrid really made the case of California shouldn't do what they're fixing to do, which is redraw their lines to get those 5 seats back for them or some other state. He said, if we're going to be the party of democracy, how can we not be the party of democracy? And we jump in and over and supersede what the California voters has said in a ballot constitution with all this input in from this civil organization that y'all have in redistricting. And I'm kind of on the other side of that now. And I let him talk and do his spiel. But I do believe that if we constantly are the party that's just taking a punch and taking a punch and taking a punch and never fighting back, that we're never going to actually have anything to fight for. When 27% of Democrats approve of the Democratic Party and the rest disapprove because they want to see us fight back. They're really sick and tired of being sick and tired of what they see as a weak party.
Eric Holder, who you would expect to come out and sort of be against the idea of the Democrats fighting back, even he came out with a piece in the New York Times and been saying, you know, enough is enough, and it's time to fight back the same. So I think that feels like the only option right now. So. You talked a little bit about state parties, and I've been really fascinated by about the fact that state parties seem like the easiest and cheapest way to really get ahead in politics and presidential and local and state and federal. But it's the place with the least amount of investment and least amount of emphasis. Has that something you've seen forever? Is that a new trend? The Republicans obviously put a lot of emphasis into that. What am I missing there?
State parties have always been underfunded. But the problem is if you get under the hood again and you look within that state party, you know, it all started with Howard Dean, who wanted a 50-state strategy, which was really smart to start investing. Republicans went around even their own state parties and invested in organizations in states, whether it was the Koch brother and the Libre Initiative. It was other actions of what we talked about with this red operation to recruit folks to run at the state level. And they put their money into building because they almost felt they had to at the time because demographics at that point was working against them. You had a country coming of age that was turning more black, brown, and multicultural and heavily AAIP in certain areas. And they weren't resonating with those voters. So they went in and started building. While Democrats kind of sat on our laurels and thought that these demographics would be our destiny and they didn't invest where they needed to. You couple that with looking under the hood at the state parties, where you know that's some of the most incestuous places on earth of where work happens. There's very few new faces at a state party. God forbid in a big county party like LA or Dallas or Houston, it's somebody's brother-in-law who has some consulting firm who's doing something and they pass it down to somebody else. It's really the bastion of this incestuous work, which really leaves out poor working class people. Stay with me here, which is really a big part of the drop off with Latino voters and some male Black and Latino voters, is that we've lost contact with these people because they don't represent in the people who are actually making the strategy. The folks that are doing the strategy think they're doing a good job, and they do a decent job. But the decent job used to get us by and we would win. But the decent job, as you've seen the whole electorate evolve, you've seen Latinos come of age of a second and third generation now being a much bigger part than the immigrants, which were 20 years ago the biggest part of the Latino vote. And you start losing a little bit of what I call cultural competency. And then when you lose that around the edges over several cycles, you see a Latino vote that's moved 18 points towards the Republicans in the last 10 years.
That's yeah. I became close to Anderson Clayton when I spent some time in North Carolina, and I thought what she was doing in that state was amazing. And if you just doubled down, it would make such a massive impact on all these elections. And now we're seeing it play out in Texas in a way that, I mean, to be honest, I'll admit it, I didn't think something like this really could happen. I mean, Donald Trump just blatantly saying, I need 5 more, votes in essence, right? I mean, well, the flip side is right. He said in the first election, he said, he called Georgia and said, I need more votes, right? So why not ask for 5 more votes here? What do you think? Play this out with me a bit. I know Greg Abbott has now threatened this kind of civil arrest, which I hear is a little more sort of just, beating his chest and doesn't really mean that much. But what do you think happens over the next couple of weeks when this?
Well, the difference between this time and last time is some of these folks stayed with me in DC, like they're friends of mine. I hosted a lot of them. I fed a lot of them. I took care of them. They're my brothers and my sisters. What happened last time is, y'all should know this if you don't, that the state legislature is really not paid. They're volunteers. They make $600 a month, and it's just a stipend for pretty much gas money. So all of these people have regular jobs to take care of their families. They may be lawyers, they may be whatever they are. They can be construction workers. Not very many construction workers are state reps. But the point is that at a certain point, you run out of money and you can't afford. Literally, the Democrats are a lot of working class folks who, if they're not at work and their work is not paying them, they can't just be gone for weeks at a time when they've got a wife or a husband and a family, right? So real life comes crashing in. The difference this time is Pritzker and a lot of other ones are putting them up. And I don't know if you know, Pritzker ain't got no problem with money. And so they ain't worried about hotel rooms. They're probably not worried about eating. Now, worried about, I don't think he can pay any of them. So how they're providing for their family will be a problem. And I think how this plays out is they eventually have to go home. I think they'll wait and make him call another special session. He's going to try to say that they're holding up flood relief, even though he's the one who held it up the first time. And I think the way that we gauge this as knowing that we can't stop it, we can delay it, is while we're delaying it, getting as much press as we can to tell voters that Donald Trump and the Republicans are truly rigging the system against the people's will. Now that sounds holier than thou, sounds like this democracy bullshit we always talk about that don't work. But these Trump voters understand grievance and they understand a rigged system. That's why they voted for Donald Trump. That's why many Democrats in the Valley that are Mexican voted for Donald Trump. They don't think that the system is working for them. Democrats have done a lackluster job at communicating that. And if we say, look, he's doing exactly what he said that Democrats were doing, which is literally rigging the system and making and picking your congressman when you should be able to pick who that is. And I think if we drive that home, and then you see California come in or somebody else and draw some lines, and I think there's a narrative as you move into the off year with the real debate, which will be they just cut all your Medicaid and your food stamps, while they're saying we just took your tax on tips off, even though it's only for 48 months and there's a small cap.
You brought up such a great point. I'm one of the people who listened to the entire 2.5 hour interview with James Tallarico and Joe Rogan, which if you have not done, I can't recommend it enough. And I been frustrated by Joe Rogan, so it's hard to really recommend sitting there for 2.5 hours. But James is fantastic. I had never heard his name before, but he talked about the fact that he's a regular guy who, doesn't really have any money, and this state senate job does not pay him, and makes it really hard to make it work. And the fact that he is now wherever he is, and that fact of actually being able to pay for your life is a really big part of how long they can stay out. Do you think if let's just say you brought up JB Pritzker, but let's just say someone said, listen, I will fund you guys and ladies for as long as it takes, never ending. And I will pay your lost wages at work as well. I mean, it's, hard to say, and whatever else you need. Do you think this could go on for, in essence, kind of forever? I mean, what do you think?
Well, James Tallarico's been to my home. He's a friend of mine. I was texting with this morning. Y'all should know that I have flown one of my media bookers to Chicago, who does a lot of my media work, to be with them, to book them on TV around the clock, because I think that's the key to victory. There's no way what you describe will ever happen, mainly because of lots of husbands and wives who are stuck at home with their children by themselves, who are all in for the cause, but at a certain point, your real life catches up with you. You don't lose them all. The majority of people are like me and you, and they'd stay till the end. But you start losing somebody because their mama's sick. You start losing somebody because you have a young wife who just had a baby. You have a young husband who just started a new job, who can't take care of the kids, who don't have infrastructure and a support team around them. So if you lose 2 or 3 of them, it's over. They break the quorum. And no matter what the majority of them are doing, that's the realistic approach, is that most of them will stay there till the cows come home. But there'll be a few that just life gets in the way and they'll have to go home because their wife is in their ass, or their husband can lose their job, or whatever that scenario may be. And that's what'll end up happening. And that's what happened last time.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not in the state legislature and government officially in any way, shape, or form. But I guess the flip side is that we're in sort of war at this point, right? And people talk about people need to get out there, they need to protest, they need to get on the front lines, they need to do what you can do. And I hope that these people who are real patriots, I hate to use that word in some ways, but it's sort of cliched at this point, but I hope they can stick it out, because it really seems like a way to make a real dent, to make an ill impact. And so whoever you speak to and needs help and support and needs places to stay, have them reach out, or I'll reach out to friends, or if they need, maybe I'll fly to Texas and, be someone's, nanny for a while or something to take care
There you go.
of their. Um, so, the Democrats are in a tough place. You've been saying it, everybody's been saying it. What are you? This is obviously a bold step, and what type of step that needs to happen. What are other things that you think the Democrats need to be doing today outside of this current crisis that we're facing with the gerrymandering in Texas? What are other things that you want to be seeing that you're not seeing?
Well, let's talk about what we've been seeing and what's been working, which is we're really good. And all the victories that we've had in the last 12 years have been when we took Donald Trump on and pointed out his indeficiencies or his mistakes, the things that he's doing that we think harm our country. We're very good as a party to call him out about whatever it is. Is it January 6th? Is it his lewd comments? Is it the emolument clause? Is it him making billions of dollars off the presidency? We could make a list and he floods the zone every day. But Democrats, we are good at that. We are good at saying what we're against. And we should do that. I'm not James Carville saying we should just let them do and crawl in a hole. No, we should highlight what he's doing that is so harmful to our homes, our democracy, but mainly to our families and our well-being. This is the part that we are not doing well. To win an election, I've been running campaigns for 36 years, going back to working for Ann Richards in Texas, is you've got to give the American worker, the American people, a reason to fire who you want out of office. And he's kind of doing that himself. But the second piece is what we really suck at, which is telling people what we're for and what we're going to do to make their lives better. In the last election, we talked about democracy, a woman's right that has been horribly stripped away from them by the Supreme Court and this president and his appointees. And those things are important. And you could talk about those things, but that wasn't driving the everyday life of folks who are trying to make it while prices were going up because of inflation or a messed up shipping system or whatever the things are. You got to get way more simpler, Democrats. And this is where you've been seeing me out there on the stump, because I'm one of the only folks who never went to college, who was a teenage father. I lived a real life, unlike a lot of consultants, good consultants, well-meaning consultants in our party. And people forget how powerful the consultants are. I know because I've done that. I've run a presidential campaign and run Senate campaigns. I have such privilege now. But what I don't see are regular folks making the strategy to go talk to regular folks. We have the smartest people in the world in this party, millions of master's degrees, lots of wisdom. And they get so caught up in the perfect policy and they want to deliver that to the people. They forget the simplisticness of make America great. I'm here to help. He's here to hurt. I want you to have more jobs. He's taking your jobs. I want things to be less. He wants things to be more. Donald Trump's verbiage is for a reason why he does that. Keep in mind, and I don't want to make any of your eye twitch, but keep in mind in the last election, Kamala Harris and their super PAC spent over $70 million just testing ads to make sure they delivered the perfect message to the perfect voter. And we got beat more so than we did 4 years ago in every county in America. So that didn't work. All of that research, all those algorithms, all those models, and all that testing. I tell you that to say we get way too complicated about something that's very simple. And we got to get back to talking to people about where they are, about their work, their family, their faith, all of the things that are everyday life for people. That's where Democrats have to get back to if we're going to succeed.
That's great. So well said. And that brings up a really interesting thing that I've been focused on, which is this the ability to say something wrong, to the ability to change your mind, the ability to change what you thought your policy was. And the thing that Democrats are most scared of, right, is this perfecting this message. There's so many people who've been out there now on these Joe Rogan podcasts, on Theo Vaughn, on these couple of hour podcasts where they say a lot of things that'll get them into trouble, and the Republican Party doesn't get into any trouble. In the Democratic Party, you say one thing wrong, and you're immediately a pariah. So I guess my question is, and as a political strategist, not to give away your free advice, but what are you telling people? Are you telling people, hey, go on these podcasts, do these things, speak from the heart, be honest. If you say something that's wrong and you get something twisted, just roll with it and, apologize if you need to apologize, or what are you kind of advising people?
Well, first of all, let's say what I'm not advising them to do, which I'm seeing a lot of right now, which is everybody wants to be a bro. Everybody wants to be cool, whatever that means. And what it means to me as a strategist. Now, keep in mind, there is not a more manly man, however you define that. But I think if you look up manly man in the dictionary, the guy in the cowboy hat who grew up on a farm with real calluses on his hands is a manly man. And what I'll tell you is most folks can see through bullshit. And what that means is Democrats, be you. If you're soft spoken, by God, be soft spoken. If you're loud, be loud. But you can be a man's man and not be a sexist asshole, A. But B, you can also, you don't have to wear a beard, you don't have to grow your beard out and start cussing more. That's what every Democratic consultant is telling every candidate right now is for their male candidates to grow out your beard, roll up your sleeves, and cuss a little more on those interviews and make it be real. And you can tell sometimes it's the most uncomfortable thing for that person to do because it just don't come natural. It's super natural for me to cuss, so much so that when I met my wife, when we were dating, she said, would you please stop cussing so much around my mother? And I was like, oh my God, I didn't even realize I really did that. I felt horrified. I got in trouble, but I fixed it. I apologized, to your point, but I wasn't burned down forever. I learned from that. That's to your point, because I didn't realize I was cussing around her mama. But when she brought it up, I'm like, oh, that's just how I talk. I didn't mean no disrespect. I will really try to watch it. That's a great, however you'd say it, symbolism of what you should be doing as a candidate. Be you. If you step over a line and you didn't mean to, apologize for it. We're a very forgiving society. I've got a criminal record. I have had went to a payday lender to get diapers. Like I've lived through shit that people wouldn't imagine. And I tell candidates all the time, if you're honest and open with people, they'll be so forgiving because the one thing that I've learned, especially having a criminal record back in the day, is when I talk about that now with kids and with criminal justice reform groups, and I go out and do speaking tours and do this stuff, I say, look, what you learn quickly is everybody's living with something and everybody's made that mistake. It may be small, it may be giant, but everybody has screwed up. And it makes you really relatable when you say, hey, I screwed up. I shouldn't have done that. And when people come to me and say, Chuck, you've got past your record, you've got past talking like that. I never went to college. I'm like, because I kind of owned it. And folks love it because I'm open about it and I talk about it and I talk about it in a way that we learn from it, especially with young kids. The one thing I'll say, and I'll stop this tirade, is with young folks, we put so much pressure on these young men and these young women, to be honest, about being perfect. You got to go to college, then you got to go get a master's degree. You need to intern with this congressman. You need to get this certain job, and maybe you can make it. Now there's AI and there's all these privileges. There's cell phones. There's porn on everything you're looking at. There's just all these things that I wasn't around. Kids and young folks don't have to be perfect. Candidate, you don't have to be perfect. Own what you're not because the rest of America is not perfect either, and they'll like you more.
I couldn't agree more with that, and I think it's mandatory. My one question to you about that, though, is I genuinely believe in the mea culpa rule. I think that if you are somebody and you speak from the heart, and you speak honestly, and you say something, and you do, and you misspeak or you speak incorrectly or whatever happens, and you say you own it. Just be honest. It works all the time. Donald Trump has proved that you can also never say you're wrong. You can also never say you're sorry. You can also never speak honestly, and you can reach the highest level of office. Do you think he's just such a unique, once in a generation character and figure, and that that philosophy only works for him? Or what do you indicated you sort of fall in line with what I'm saying, but what do you think about when it comes to his strategy?
The difference is between that and in the 90s when I was working for Dick Gephardt or whoever I was working for back in the day is there was no internet. Like the difference now is you have an echo chamber of people out there that put out misinformation. Now, misinformation ain't everything, but it's part of this stuff, right? It's like this whole Epstein thing right now that will not go away. It's because of the internet and people who've went down these rabbit holes, right? And I think Donald Trump is a unique character. There's one thing for sure is when Donald Trump is on the ticket, voters perform a certain way for him that they don't for any other Republican who try to act like him. They still get decent support, but they are not him. And they don't get all the support. I worked and ran Ruben Gallego's Senate race. And there's 300,000 more registered Republicans in Arizona than Democrats, unlike Nevada and Michigan, where we also won Democratic seats that Donald Trump won those states as well. But Rubin way overperformed because there's a group of people who don't like to hear him and know that he's lying, who I call common sense economic Republicans. They're folks who very much want to make money. They don't really care who's gay and who's sleeping with each other. They don't like this immigration stuff where there's military in the streets. But they were willing to fall in line, and they did not like Joe Biden. Well, let me promise everybody that's listening, they want to come back to something that's more commonsensical. There's going to be a real battle in the next presidential election for the heart and soul of both parties, because there's going to be a lot of people lying and running and being bombastic like Donald Trump. And on our side, there's going to be the lefties, there's going to be the moderates, there's going to be people with beards and cowboy hats and gay people and young people, like all kinds of people. And who really is who we are. And it's going to tell a lot about the future of this country for a long time to come, Jamie, because I think both of the parties are kind of in the wind after Donald Trump is gone, because I think he is once in a lifetime, just like Barack Obama was.
I know you were considering for a second running for DNC chair, and then decided that wasn't the best use of your time or energy. Let's say today you're made chair of the DNC, and forget for a second how complicated it is to work it and manage it and comes to raising money and yada, yada, yada. More in the sense of like, what should the Democrats be doing today? What do you see in the 2026, horizon? And what do you see also looking further into the presidential election?
If I was running the DNC, I'd start by investing into state parties and county parties that overlap with targeted Senate and House races. You can't get everybody in the first round, and it would be easy for me to go, we'll have a 50-state system and we're going to get every party in every state. Sure, everybody can have some money, but not every party is going to have an election this cycle. But where there's going to be, we have to win an election before we can change the world, boys and girls. And the way to win an election is to double down in those places where there's going to be election, and then learn from those best practices, and then go to all the states and all the county parties. But make some direct investment there to build out ground teams that can run coordinated campaigns to where the party's in charge of all the door knocking. How does that sound? Building a brand of the party in community. We've lost all of that. Building the brand in community around events that are non-electoral, around turkey giveaways, around helping people with citizenship tests, or whatever that thing was when it used to be the center of the community, like the local union hall. This is what I would do if I was running the national party, is start that investment training programs and mentoring programs to get more people into the party after firing everybody's brother-in-law that's currently working for every one of those state parties and county parties.
Great. I love that. I mean, again, we talked about it earlier. I think focusing on these state parties, and to your point, that's what Democrats need to do. They need to be more targeted in what they're doing, and not just, sort of do.
Can I interrupt you and tell you that we have been so focused on voter registration in our party for the last 20 years through nonpartisan voter apparatuses, because again, we're the smart people. We should take tax deductible money and move it through nonprofits and do nonpartisan registration. And over all of that time, we never were telling people why to be Democrats. We were just registering them to vote. And the Democratic Party didn't do registrations because the smart money and the smart people said we have to do it nonpartisan so we can all get a tax rebate on that, and we can do hundreds of millions of dollars, and we did. But we never took the time to tell people why they should be Democrats and what the Democrats do to make their lives better, and we lost that generation.
Answer that question. Why should someone support a Democrat today?
Because there's a real difference between the parties. And I think what I tell people when I want to really persuade them is watch what they do, not what they say. And I joined the party 20 years ago because of what Donald Trump ran on in the last election. That should give everybody a wake-up call. You've heard me say this, that I was fighting NAFTA. I wanted to drain the swamp, and I didn't want my money, my tax dollars, going overseas when there was people in my community hungry. Well, Donald Trump stole our message, but he's not really doing anything except benefiting him and his friends. So that really gets between the voters. The voters, you first have to be open with the voters and say, look, we've lost our way. We've lost focus on what built this party. We're going to get back to focusing on that, which is family, faith, work, the relationship of community, and start fighting for you. Donald Trump made you think he was fighting for you, but now in what he's doing is proving that he's for the millionaires, all of his buddies, and the only family he really cares about is his own. Whether it's building golf courses in Scotland, crypto, whatever, everything he does is about him. He's trying to sell you a bill of goods, but I'm here as a Democrat to take us back to FDR or Obama, whatever the thing is, to say, root it in your message in work. Everybody, no matter what you do, even if you're drawing Social Security and you're retired, has had to work to provide for your family. When's the last time you saw a Democrat show up and talk about the sanctity of work, daycare, to go to work, healthcare at work, all of the things that you have to have that's centered around providing for your family? We've got to live in that space.
Make life easier for people.
Whatever that is.
On the flip side, I've heard you describe the Republican messaging as sugarcoating a shit sandwich. Is A, is that accurate? And B, I'd love you to just deliver in your words that same sentiment, because it doesn't sound as wonderful as when you say it.
Well, obviously you've been listening to my propaganda, so I appreciate you. And what I was talking about was this big bullshit bill. And this whole bill is going to be tried to sold to the American people. And this is where the shit sandwich comes in, because this whole bill is a tremendous shit sandwich. And there's nothing good about it whatsoever for the American people, except for a little bit of sugar. And that little bit of sugar is no tax on tips and no tax on overtime, which are both sunsetted after a few months, about 48 months, from 2 to 2.5 years. And it expires, it goes away. And there's a low cap. And they do that just so that they can get you tasting the sugar and can run ads saying, we are for no tax on tips. They won't say it sunsets. And we're for no taxing overtime, because that's them putting sugar on a shit sandwich. So that first bite tastes like sugar and it's going to be okay. But now you have to sit and eat all the rest of that shit. And that's how we win the midterm elections.
Let's talk a little bit about the Democratic field. I mean, people, keep beating up on Democrats. The numbers are in the toilet. I've been pounding my chest and saying how excited I am about all these Democratic voices that I see out there. And I keep learning about new ones. I mean, I never heard of James Tallarico a couple weeks ago or a month ago. I'm sad to hear that he says he's not going to be running for office in the future. I'm not sure I totally believe him, but I'm going to believe him because he seems like the most believable guy in the world. I'd love you to give me some insight on what he's going to do. But let's talk a little bit. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves and talk about 2028, but who are you excited about right now that's running for office? Who gives you hope? Do you believe the Democrats are, in my opinion, this is the best field of Democrats I've seen in my adult life? Maybe I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid, but what do you think?
We have had an excellent recruiting class, and everybody should be running campaigns that look like this is self-serving. I own this, but the Ruben Gallegos of the world. Ruben was in the Progressive Caucus, but ran as a common sense, moderate Democrat, even though he'd been in the Progressive Caucus his whole life and still pretty progressive. And he would talk about border security while at the same time talking about a pathway to citizenship for hardworking folks who've come to this country. It's pretty common sense, but Democrats were scared shitless about immigration, just wouldn't talk about it, just like Kamala Harris wouldn't talk about the trans ad, and it come back to bite us in our ass. But there were people like Ruben who handled it right. And now as we jump forward to these midterm elections, I'm super excited that Roy Cooper is running in North Carolina, because that means we can flip that seat. I'm super excited that I hear Sherrod Brown is interviewing staff in Ohio. He hasn't announced yet, but he's the only one who could win that Ohio seat in an off year when it's going to be good for Democrats. And there's congressional races all over the country where there are candidates popping up to run. I tell everybody to always look at a guy named Gabe Vasquez in southern New Mexico, which is everything south of Albuquerque to the Mexican border. Gabe wins a district that's R+1, D+1, all depending on what year it is. It's a swing district. And he wears a baseball hat and sits on the back of a truck with a hunting dog and fights for water and land and fights pollution, and is like a man's man who is a conservation champion, and talks about immigration and what immigration means to his community living on the border in a positive way. So there are pieces that we have taken, and if you look at it, it will give you hope for the future, because you can see that as we lead towards 28, there's going to be all these rock stars out there that are running, whether it's Wes Moore, maybe a Ruben Gallego, a Pritzker, a Pennsylvania governor. It could be lots and lots of Rocana. I could go on forever. There's going to be 30 people running, but we're going to have a plethora. I use that from the Three Amigos for all you old people, a plethora of so much talent to look at to figure out who really is going to be our standard bearer.
Well, I'm not going to let you off that easy. So if you're drafting your fantasy team for the 2028 election, and it is insane to even get that far ahead, but just for the fun.
No, it's not. We do this.
I like it. So for the fun of it, you named some of them. Obviously, There's the Gretchen Whitmers. There's a Gavin Newsom. I'm not sure if you're a gambling man, but if you're in Vegas right now, who are you putting your money on? Who are some people you're putting your money on? What do you have a ranking order as you see right
There's
now?
a top tier, right? And there's a top tier of people like Pritzker because he's got plenty of money and he knows how to build an operation. Pennsylvania will always, Shapiro will always be in the mix because Pennsylvania will always be literally the Keystone State. You're welcome, Pennsylvania. But then there are amazing young guns who have great profiles like a Ruben Gallego or a Wes Moore, both super duper honorable military service, U.S. Senator, governor, young, good looking, young families, all the things that a guy like me who's built a presidential campaign is looking for, right? So I think I definitely think somebody like those are in the top tier, right? I don't think that a Pete Buttigieg makes it because of the Biden hangover. I think that Gavin Newsom is going to try really hard, but I don't know if he ever gets out of his own way and all the things in California. I don't know if America's ready to elect a woman, and it breaks my heart to say that. That's why I think a Ruben Gallego or a Wes Moore will be a vice president. They may run, but they would be somebody because we definitely have a brown and black man problem, and they could help with that. And what I'm saying about women is, I've voted for every woman who's been nominated. I think we deserve to have a woman president, but I just looking at what I look at in the numbers. If you said what's the dream scenario, it would be a Pritzker Gallego ticket. It would be a Shapiro Wes Moore ticket. It would be somebody like a Ro Khanna who is really a pragmatist, right, and is a populist. And so like these folks, there's going to be a lot of people who run, and I'll tell you this and stop talking, is I've managed a $250 million presidential budget, and I've hired 1,000 staffers to work for Bernie Sanders. I don't work for Bernie anymore. I was hired to do what I did, and I'm damn good at what I do when you hire me. I'm hired to win elections. And not too many people can actually raise the money that you need to actually win. AOC is raising a lot of money. Love it or hate it. If she gets in this thing, she instantly becomes real, even if a woman can't win, because she can raise so much money, she'll have so much energy. And in the presidential election, momentum really does mean something.
Yeah, I mean, you haven't talked about AOC much. I mean, she is what she's doing and what the energy she's creating around the country. I mean, she has a lot of Democrats, moderate Democrats, and are definitely not on board the AOC train. What do you think about this sort of split in the party? You worked obviously very close with Bernie. You talked about AOC. How did this Democrats talk about this big tent? And you have a lot of names you brought up. Most of the names you brought up are moderates. Do you think the Democratic Party itself is sort of so fractured right now? Do you see it coming back together? Do you think it's not as fractured as we believe it is? What do you think?
The press and pundits love to put labels. This sounds like a Bernie Sanders sellout. But if you look at somebody like a Greg Casar, for those of you at home, Greg is the Austin congressman who is now being redistricted, taking us back to the beginning, with Lloyd Doggett, because there's now just one seat in Austin where there was two. Greg is only 35 years old, and he's the chairman of the Progressive Caucus. But if you saw Greg talk, and Greg goes on picket lines with bullhorns, he talks about work. He talks about progressive economics. He don't talk about defund the police. He's not advocating to have trans athletes parades every day. I'm talking about all of the ludicrous stuff that we talk about, much of which I support all of. I'm telling them how the right wing uses this stuff. Is that there's a middle ground here to be a pragmatic populist and progressive and still do it the way Ruben Gallego did it. And some on the left, you're right, they hate Ruben because he didn't do this or he voted for this bill or he did whatever. But he's the most popular candidate in Arizona right now. And he would sign a bill tomorrow to make to make millions of people, give them some kind of working papers, right? So they weren't undocumented. A very progressive stance on lots of things. So I think us, pundits and press, put a lot of mislabels on, well, are you progressive or are you moderate? I think everybody's a little progressive. I think everybody's a little moderate. Finding that special sweet spot in the middle where you're not selling out either side, I think is where lots of people are, where you're going to see the winning candidate be. And that could be an AOC. That could be a Shapiro or a Gallego. because both of them can meet in the middle and they don't have to give up too much of, like you said, of evolving.
AOC isn't there yet, but where AOC started her career versus where she is today, she's basically a moderate. The Democrats, are eating themselves in many ways at times, and I hope they get out of their way. I mean, we're, still busy canceling people. We just experienced the Sydney Sweeney, uproar, which I don't know if you have a perspective on that. Donald Trump had a perspective on that. He's very excited now.
Like you say, she's a Republican. I love her. She's a Republican. God Almighty, he is anyway. If I was the president, I would like get as much trouble as he is. Look, we can't get out of our own way a lot of times on this stuff. Like I love the TV show Sydney Sweeney's in. I got no beef with her. She wants to get naked on a jeans commercial. I don't care if a man gets naked on a jeans commercial. A beautiful man is a beautiful man, is a beautiful woman. If that's what you do, sex sells, do it. I sell people shit every single day. Can read into the jeans and these are my jeans. Like, look, I don't worry about all that bullshit because regular working class people don't give a shit about that. Twitter trolls care about it. People out there that are virtue signaling care about it. But everyday people figuring out how to fucking feed their family don't give a shit about what color Sydney Sweeney's eyes are.
Well said. I'm excited for Sydney Sweeney to vote for whatever Democratic candidate she votes for because I'm not ceding her to the Republican Party or
Absolutely, me neither. Neither I ain't giving up Walter Goggins either. Because I don't know if y'all watched the famous Gemstones, but I'm pretty much Baby Billy in a cowboy hat. If you've watched the Gemstones,
we're sadly finishing up in a few minutes, but I should have started someplace that you alluded to, but I want to go back to the beginning of this conversation for 1 second, which is you do have a very unique road you took to this part of your career. You had an unusual childhood. Can you give us the 30-second Chuck Rocha bio?
Yeah, I grew up in a trailer house. That's for those of you at home, a house you can hook a truck to and move. That was next door to my grandmama's house. My mama was just 15. She met my father at church. He was 18. It was a Baptist church, and they got married. And I came along, 9 months later. My daddy's Mexican. My mama was white. I grew up on a working farm in East Texas. Went to work at a factory when I was 19. Got a girl pregnant when I was 19 to carry on a long tradition of babies having babies. I've lived a real life. I never knew anything about politics. Knew nothing about public policy. I didn't join politics to help my fellow man. I did this to help Chuck Rocha, and then realized I was helping so many other people when I joined the union at that factory and realized I had a voice that was really powerful when I became a steward. And that's opened the doors up to me being here today. And that was my God, that was almost 37 years ago. And the things that my grandfather taught me, because my daddy left when I was 5. My grandfather was in World War II. He had third grade education. He taught me how to work hard, put his tools back, to have a schedule, to chew with my mouth closed, to show respect. And that man could have never found France on a map like I can't find Germany. But that didn't make him stupid or ignorant, just like it don't make me that. I've had a lot of trials and tribulations and bounced in bars, fought grown men when my mama was growing up and going through all of her boyfriends. And those things made me who I am. And now that I'm in the most powerful rooms in the world, I want kids to know. And I start every speech I give, and I've spoken at Harvard and Yale and everywhere. I say, my name is Chuck Rocha. I've never been to college. I'm a convicted felon, and I was a teenage father. Any one of those 3 things should have kept me out of politics. And I'm all 3 of those things, and I got a loud mouth. So there's no way in hell I should be doing this. And if I can do this, and you're sitting at Harvard or Yale, you should be able to do this easy peasy. Just work hard, show up on time, and do something that you love. Soon as I realized that I could fight back the power and that they had to go through me, I realized, and there was a euphoria moment where I was like, I've been fighting for my mama, whether it was fighting for my quarterback when I was an all-state lineman, fighting to keep my family safe. I've always been the biggest, meanest person in the room, and it was always me who had to fight. But now I get to fight to protect all these other workers through the Democratic Party because the Republicans are trying to fuck them because all they care about is money. And money for them, not money for us. So when I can help level the playing field and what I learned through the union and being an organizer and working in a factory, that's what makes me different than every political consultant today. And that's the story that there's not very many of me in this party, definitely not running shit. So that's why I try to speak up and go, okay, Democrats, I know you went to a college and I know that you mean well, but let's take the best of you, who's got all of this knowledge and policy influence, and the best of me, the street fighter. who grew up with nothing, who's hustled his way into every situation and showed up on time, chewed with my mouth closed, and showed a lot of respect to people. And it's got me a long way.
I wish I had heard of something as powerful as that to end a conversation on, Chuck. You are we are lucky to have you in the Democratic Party. We're lucky to have you just period. And what you've lived a really extraordinary life. I want to thank you for all your work. We need you out there on the front lines. Keep talking. Let's stay in touch.
Don't forget, my staff would kill me if I didn't plug my Substack, which is the Rocha Revolution. Follow me on all the social medias. I'm on the Twitters and I'm on the Instagram. Twitter's where you'll get my political takes. Instagram, you'll get some workout videos and my grandkids.
100%. We'll promote that. The link's in there. Everybody, please sign up. Make sure to pay. You can be a founding member. That's
right. $8 a month, and I'll keep my shirt on.
Yeah, there you go.
Miss Sweeney.
Enjoy New Orleans. I know you're not gonna have much time, but eat at some of my favorite places. Get a po' boy at Domelisa's.
Ooh, you know it.
Get a snow blitz at Hanson's. Get some oysters at Felix. Get some beignets at Loretta's. Just enjoy. And it's, I know it's nice and cold down there too right now.
I'm going fishing tomorrow.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, send me some photos of those fish.
All right, brother.
Thanks, Chuck. Thanks.
Appreciate y'all. Appreciate you.